gossip blinds. Catch the news, don't get left behind. Don't miss this. Don't miss this.
Please note that this next portion may have some trigger warnings as there are mentions of essay sexual assault. From scandalous love triangles to wild Hollywood debauchery, Enty from Crazy Days and Nights has spun some of the juiciest blind items from the glamorous yet gritty golden age of Hollywood. Some of them seem almost too good to believe. Well, that is because they are. Let's kick things off with the legendary tale of Marilyn Monroe and JFK. Enty's blind would have you believe that Monroe wasn't just a lover, but a pawn and a secret government plot. In reality, while Monroe's connection to JFK is no secret, the idea of her being a CIA agent or involved in some high-stakes espionage, total fantasy. Then there's the blind about Rock Hudson, Hollywood's matinee idol, and his alleged secret fixer who would silence anyone who would threaten to out his private life. While Hudson did have to hide his true self due to the social climate, these blinds paint a picture straight out of a noir film, a bit exaggerated to say the least. And how can we forget the bizarre tale of Howard Hughes, supposedly locking starlets away for weeks at a time, using them as muses and puppets? Sure, Hughes was eccentric, but the blinds take this to levels that belong in a Hitchcock thriller rather than a history book. Enty also loved pushing blinds about starlets like Judy Garland, who was reportedly subject to all kinds of unspeakable things by studio executives. The tragic truth is Hollywood did have a dark side when it came to child actors, but Enty's version often strays into over-the-top conspiracy territory. At the end of the day, these blinds are just like a twisted game of telephone. Small truths wrapped up in layers of dramatic fiction with just enough glitter to make you wonder, could it be real? So let's get into one of the blind items that Enty lawyer, aka John Nelson of Crazy Days and Nights, not really an entertainment lawyer, wrote on June 22nd, 2012, and he revealed who it was about a week later on July 4th. And this is Blind Items Reveal number 39, Old Hollywood. In this space, I've written about several of the exploits of Eddie Mannix, but most of those involved paying off a couple of people or finding a willing reporter. There was once a time, though, where Eddie paid off nearly 24 people, all to keep his studio bosses happy. There have been a lot written about a party held one night that resulted in SA of a chorus actress and how Eddie bought off jurors and even the SA's victim's lawyer. It is quite the story and absolutely ruined the life of the actress. Instead of the $400K she was offered, a 7-year contract, she got nothing, and nothing happened to her SA abuser. When no one asks is why the studio goes to such great lengths to protect a salesman, SA abuser, they didn't put on the full court press because of the salesman. They did it because they didn't want anyone focused on what else happened that night. There was a 15-year-old who was there. She was going to be the studio's biggest star. She had been putting off the studio head and the executive second in charge. There had been some groping by both men, but she refused to sleep with them. That night, though, they didn't give her a choice. The studio boss and the executive took turns assaulting her. They tried to get her drunk, but she refused. Several people were standing outside the room where it was taking place and watched it happen. There are stories that because of it, it inspired the salesman to do the same thing. Others said the salesman was ordered to SA someone at the party so that all the guests would talk about that one and not the one by the two of the studio bosses. In her very unfinished biography, the actress talks about both men, but only refers to the groping. She had barely written anything about before giving up on the project. In the publisher's archives, there are letters which refer to it, though, as well as her unfinished manuscript. Enty managed to keep everything quiet by focusing the world's attention on the chorus actress. And it supposedly has to do with Patricia Douglas, MGM, Judy Garland, The Wizard of Oz, and Louis B. Mayer. The blinds about Judy Garland, particularly those from Crazy Days and Nights, paint a disturbing picture of her treatment by Hollywood executives, going far as suggesting that she was systematically abused in every imaginable way. While it's widely known that Garland suffered immensely during her time in the spotlight, definitely used by the studio system, the blinds often inflate these tragic realities into salacious and exaggerated conspiracy theories. Here's the real story, guys. Judy Garland was thrust into Hollywood at a young age, signing with MGM at just 13. As a teenager, she was subjected to the studio's control, including a highly restrictive diet, as they believed she didn't fit the ideal image of a glamorous starlet. She was constantly given pills to keep her energy up and sleeping pills to help her rest. This brutal cycle led to her lifelong struggle with addiction, which plagued her career and personal life. In addition to the physical demands, Garland was under immense pressure to always deliver the charm and magic MGM expected. It's true that studio executives were emotionally abusive, often criticizing her weight and appearance, which deeply affected her self-esteem. The most infamous example of this is how Louis B. Mayer, the head of MGM, reportedly called her his little hunchback because she didn't fit the typical Hollywood beauty standards at the time. However, the blinds Enty pushes takes these truths and turns them into something more sinister, suggesting that Garland was not only emotionally and physically manipulated, but also the victim of repeated SA by Hollywood elites. These claims are not entirely implausible given the era's dark underbelly, but it's hard to prove and often rely on hearsay. In contrast, documented accounts of Garland's life, including her own interviews, memoirs by her daughter, Lorna Luft, and friends like Mickey Rooney, focuses on the emotional and psychological damage the industry caused her, rather than supporting more extreme accusations. The exaggeration comes in with Enty's tendency to lump Garland's genuine hardships into broader, more grotesque conspiracy that lacks verifiable sources. While it's clear that Judy faced horrific treatments, especially as a young actress, not every detail in these blinds can be backed up. Much of it feels designed to shock rather than to inform. What was really going on in her life? Garland's struggle with addiction, her string of failed marriages, and her battles with depression became public knowledge later in her life. She had a tough time maintaining relationships, both personal and professional, and the constant pressure to be perfect on and off screen haunted her until her untimely death in 1969 and at the young age of 47. Enty's blinds, while possibly based on whispers of truth, inflate these tragic elements into grander Hollywood horror story. It is a case of truth being stranger than fiction, but fiction still trying to take the spotlight.
Tune into the buzz, it's the talk of the day. From Bravo shows to the latest celeb spree, we've got the tea, come sip it with me. Dani Gossip Girl, Pop Culture Exposé, we're spilling all the secrets every